Welcome to today's Bixby Marshland Saturday morning broadcast. I'm Wendy. I'm a civil engineer with the Sanitation Districts of Los Angeles County. I'm going to be fielding questions today, so if you have questions for Heidi, please either use the raise hand feature or the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we're going to answer your questions throughout the broadcast. Today's webinar is going to provide a virtual tour of our 17-acre marshland and just a bit about the sanitation districts. We treat sewage from over 5.6 million people. So if you live in one of those shaded areas shown on the screen, we take your sewage. We also operate a solid waste system which accommodates about 1/4 of the county's solid waste management needs. We're here to serve. And I just wanted to mention as we get started, everything we do is centered on our mission. So I want to report that we continue to protect the public health and the environment. And most importantly, during this situation, we're all working together to stay safe. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Heidi Husnak. Heidi's going to share highlights from her experience as one of Bixby's very first inaugural docents. Students out there may find it challenging to keep up with Heidi. I know I do. She first came to our joint plant with her USC biology class back in 1975. I guess you could use your raise hand feature and see how many of you were on the planet at that point. I know I was. Heidi went on to receive her bachelor's from USC in science and biology. Her also Juris Doctorate in environmental law, again from USC, and she practiced law until she decided to run a high-end construction company. During all of this, she continued to volunteer and give to the marshland. She is so well known at the California Cactus and Succulent Society, where she has a reputation for growing not only plants, but also future leaders. So go ahead and take it away, Heidi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. The image that you see on the screen right now is the watershed. The watershed is how water flows, and this is for Los Angeles County. So it's really amazing. So you can see the San Gabriel Mountains, and oops, sorry, my phone's crazy. You can see the San Gabriel Mountains in the background. That forms the backdrop of Los Angeles County, and you can often hear weather people say, today in the basin. Well, yes, we live in a bowl. It's a basin. So it's backdropped by those mountains, and it tilts this way, and that's why we have smog, which, sorry. That's why we have smog, but that's also why our water flows so beautifully. So without, as Wendy said, the sewage treatment is able to be done without a whole lot of pumping because the water actually flows. So we're here in the Bixby Marshland. So I'm going to take the term Bixby first. You'd be like, you probably heard Bixby before. Why is this Bixby word around? Bixby is an old recipient of a Mexican-Spanish land grant. They got about 100,000 acres handed to them. They raised cattle, not for food, because there was no refrigeration and transportation. What they did was raise the cattle for hide and for tallow. Tallow is a really big deal. So in your free time, look up tallow. You'd be amazed. So the marshland is, people think of marsh as swamp. And that's not what this is. This is an active water system. So we have another marsh in the general area, Madrona, which is over by the Delamo Fashion Center, and it's vernal. So when it has water, but that's it. And it's beautiful, and I encourage you to go there. It has a great educational center. But this marshland is part of what is known as the Bixby Slough, S-L-O-U-G-H. A slough is a water containment area. And this entire area here from, if you live in the area, you probably have experienced it, from pretty much the 110 freeway to the end of Hawthorne is a flood zone. So you'll see the signs on the side of the road. They're yellow road signs, black lettering that says area floods during rain or something along those lines. So what happened was, of course, as urbanization occurred, people didn't want to back out of their driveway into 2 or 3 feet of water. So the agencies, local agencies, created what we now know as the Wilmington Drain. So it's not a round drain, like it's just an open culvert, concrete culvert. It runs up tight against the 110 freeway, and it collects all that runoff water, and it filters it down to Lake Machado, which is part of the slough. So our slough runs from pretty much we're one end of it here at the marsh, and ultimately Lake Machado, which has been beautifully rehabilitated, and I encourage you to visit that as well. We had a lot of Proposition O money there, and we got it cleaned up. It was pretty much a DDT repository, which was not pretty. And so, and then that water ultimately goes to the ocean. So the marshland here, we have different tiers of it. So we have the upper meadow area, and then an open meadow area, and then as we kind of transition down towards the water. So different plants thrive in different parts of this system. So let me address the trees a little bit. We have, first of all, why is this here? Okay, so behind us, we have the Joint Water Pollution Control Plant, which is processing all this wastewater. And as part of their expansion, the EPA, through an EIR, Environmental Impact Report, required something to be done ecologically progressive. And what the district did beautifully was hire top-notch consultants and landscape people, and they figured out a way to make these 17 acres, which is what the marshland is, a viable, thriving marshland again. Now, it had been a marshland, you know, before all the water was diverted away to the Wilmington Drain. So bringing this back was really, really big deal. So some of the plants that we have here, we took all the non-natives out and we planted natives. But, you know, life happens and birds poop and they bring stuff, and we get non-natives, and that it's somewhat managed as best we can. This is an image of the Torrey pine. Now that again is a word or a name that may be familiar to you, but more as a golf course closer to San Diego. Torrey pines are native to California. We don't have very many of them left. And so we were able to be a host for the Torrey pines, and we have them here. And one of their favorite visitors and are these hummingbirds. So I mean, and then you can imagine these guys. This is a very enlarged image. So these guys are about the size of a quarter or less. They're tiny, but they thrive here. There's Mama Anna's hummingbird, which is the most popular, Allen's, sorry, not Anna. Allen's hummingbird, the most popular one that we have around here, and it's not seasonal. A lot of hummingbirds are seasonal, they'll, you know, fly through. So let's, flyway is a good thing to address as well. We are on the Pacific Flyway, which means that from Alaska down to Patagonia, yeah, not the clothing company, an actual country, we have and experience beautifully the migration in the spring and in the fall of many bird species. So one resource that you might want to check out if you're interested in birds is Cornell, the university. Cornell Ornithology has incredible information that you can get for free about birds in your area, about tracking them, about them. Here we have a flicker, a yellow-bellied sapsucker. I know that's a derogatory term, right? But he's busy. He's busy in this wood getting stuff. So birds are hard to see because birds are clever and they protect themselves. So you're not, when you come to the marshlands, if you're able to come post-pandemic-ish, a lot of times you're going to have to just close your eyes and listen, and you can hear them. They're all out there, but they're not going to be right in your face because they have to protect themselves. So let's see, here we go. So you can see, so what they did when they created the marshland was they built pathways. So the object is to stay on the pathway and let nature be nature on its own. So here we go. Let's see. So we're gonna go, can we, the parking lot maybe? Okay, so we're seeing a lot of plant life here. So here we have, so one of our very common plants is this purple sage. So it's, yeah, you might be familiar with cooking sage. This is much more pungent. You don't want to cook with it, but it's beautiful. And like many of the plants in our somewhat Mediterranean climate, see how it's sort of has sort of a gray tint to it. It's not vibrant green. It's not Hawaii. Okay, so this grayness protects it from the sun. It also tends to be an oily plant. So again, it's protecting itself. And it has beautiful purple flower. This one is purple. So you can see the image here. So this is some of the educational things we have are these placards that will explain the plants. So we have these.
Question from Martin. So I'll go ahead and ask. He's asking where the marsh is located. So I think the best way is to use kind of the freeway, but it's at the corner of Figueroa and Sepulveda. So it's at the cross street there. It doesn't necessarily, and adjacent to the 110 and the Wilmington Drain, it doesn't necessarily have its own address, but we can put in the chat box the address for our joint plant, which will certainly get you there. But if you go to the corner of Figueroa and Sepulveda, you're going to see the entrance to the Marshway. So thank you for that, Martin, and we look forward to having you out there again. All right, we'll continue on.
Right, and you can see it from the freeway. Some of us saw it as we were commuting to work as it was first being constructed. So one of the things that we talk about is resource and recycling. So when all the native of the non-native plants were pulled out so that we could regrade it, have the water flow through the marsh as it should. So it comes from, the water actually gets pumped from the Wilmington Drain and it flows naturally. So the grading was done with exceptional skill. It flows through the marsh and then it goes back out to the drain and ultimately goes to Lake Machado and then to the ocean. So this is our, as you enter the water area, these are willows. Willows are, we like to say, they are happy to have wet feet. So they're happy to have their roots in the water. They are an incredibly important part of the indigenous peoples, which here were Tongva Indians, which is most of Los Angeles County. So willows are extraordinary. They are used medicinally. They have they have something that we talk about, it's like aspirin, salicylic acid. So they're used medicinally, they're used for weaving. they propagate. So what a marshland does in nature, its function is to deal with storm flood water. So when things flood, they come through and the marsh stops that water, deals with it, filters it, cleans it. Sometimes marshes are called the kidneys of a waterway. And then some of the water goes down into the groundwater system, and then some of it does end up flowing out to the ocean. So this is the image you see right now is toyon, that are known commonly as California holly. So it's actually protected because so many people pick it around the holidays because it looks like a holly. And the famous sign that we have on the hillside up there off the Hollywood freeway is the Hollywood sign, right? And why is it called Hollywood to begin with? Because of this plant. So it's named, that entire hillside was full of these toyon California hollies. California sagebrush, so this is not a true sage, but it's all over our hillsides here. If you go out hiking, if any of you go to Del Cerro at the end of Crenshaw, which is a huge hiking area, you're gonna see the sagebrush. So when you brush against it, the scent is sage-like, but it's on a higher, lighter note than a true sage. And here it is in its end stages. It's gonna repopulate itself. And then we do have some native sunflowers. So sunflowers are, people always think of the petals as being the flower, but actually that little bit inside, that's the flower. This is just sort of ancillary. So, but it's pretty, it's very pretty. And this is lemonade berry. Again, Native Americans used it for a drink. It's a sour lemonade tasting drink. You can see on the leaves here how thick they are. And that again protects it from the sun. So these guys can live when there is no water happening. I mean, it actually rained this morning, but we are constantly in drought. Here we have the sagebrush again, and you can see the flowers and these little clusters all over the place. And this is buckwheat. Buckwheat was an important food source for the indigenous population. Buckwheat's popular now because we're all afraid of gluten. But yeah, it's buckwheat and it's beautiful. And the good thing about the buckwheat is that it flowers and it lasts really into the fall. So when the critters out there, the birds and the animals, are looking for sustenance as we're losing food sources, as we're heading into winter, as if California has a winter, but we do have a winter. Buckwheat is an important part of that food source system. So here we have one of our pavilions. This is the education pavilion when it was young. This is all constructed, this building as well as the round pavilion are constructed from eucalyptus that were harvested and taken out because clearly Australia is not California, so they were non-native. But the wood was saved and used beautifully. So we have the educational pavilion and the big round pavilion, both of them. So here we go. You can see they were underplanted with a California grape. So it's a native grape. It's very tiny, dark purple, seed. You can see the babies here. That's what a grape cluster looks like when it's growing. And then it'll plump out and it'll get purple. The birds will be all over it. And then it'll turn it'll color. So it'll look like, you know, when you're jealous of your friends on the East Coast with their fall colors, the grapes actually get the fall color. This is a native California rose we have here. This is actually about the size of a 50-cent piece. And so that gives you the idea of how small this little calligrapher bug is. We also, so as a note, you know, we look at the website on and off. At times we do have an entomologist, a bug guy, come out and give bug talks. And if you don't like bugs or you like bugs, doesn't matter, it's fascinating. So I encourage it. Here's a big fat bumblebee playing with the pollen on that rose. And the roses also produce hips, rose hip tea, you know, 70s, here we go. So the hips are also a food source for the local animals. And so there are no, just to be clear, no animals were introduced here. So any animal that is here showed up because it was a cool place to be. So the only thing that's introduced are mosquito fish. They're provided by our vector control agency to eat mosquito larvae because we do have West Nile. Here's the elderberry. Elderberry has a lovely fragrance. It's not pungent, it's just light. You can see the berries here. Elderberry wine is a thing, and jam. But it's a great source for pollinators. So let's see, where are we? Okay. So these folks, you can see in front of the leader here, you can see they're walking towards the bridge. So there's the bridge that spans between, spans the open water source. So it's kind of the end point of the marsh is the open water. So we get, so that's where, so these, what you see onto your right and left are the tules, the reeds, the water reeds. They have hollow stems, that's how they breathe. They normally in a big marsh, and this is just a thumbnail of a marsh, they would be flattened by the floodwaters, and that's how they kind of get controlled. But we don't have that here, so we have to manage and control them. So, about a third of them every year get removed because otherwise they'll just take, there would be no open water source. So they are provide great habitat for bird species. Like the ducks are going to nest in there so that they're hidden. Mr. Show Off here is somebody you're going to see during the breeding season and the migration. This is the male red-winged blackbird. When he goes across your line of sight, you can't ignore him. He's right there. The female, of course, is brown and dull because she's sitting on the nest and she doesn't want predators to see her or the babies that she's sitting on top of. That's how life goes. Okay, here you can see the bridge. So what you see how the trees are arching sort of towards each other? So when the willows that are sitting right there, when their seed pods explode, if you have the luxury of being here during that time in the fall, they produce a fluff, white fluff. That's how they transport their seeds. And so the entire archway will be nothing but white fluff. It looks like it snowed, like in Southern California. So I encourage you to do a tour or a walk then. So it's the first Saturday of every month when we're post having to be in place because of the pandemic. So you can see how dense these tules are. Oh, okay, so here we have a Canada goose with two goslings, fluffy little cuties, aren't they? So they're happy here. They nest in those tules. This frog, it's the only native frog we have. So all the other frogs that you caught when you were kids, those were not native. This guy is actually about the size of a quarter. So he's really, really tiny, and he is up in the trees or the shrubs. And he's so loud that he sounds like he's 25 times his size. We have some ducklings here in the water, feeling very comfortable because there are no predators here. They're just exploring life. Again, the adults just sort of gabbling away, as ducks do. And then we have our egret. So our egret is one of the most popular birds because it's so gloriously snow white. And when it sits, a lot of times as you come around the corner towards that bridge that's between, that separates the open water, the egret will just be sitting there kind of looking, see what's going on down there. So they're magnificent birds. Here's a heron. They also do that thing. And you can see, these are the tules sort of laying down because the water has pushed them down. And you can see they're hollow. See how and then, these are, we call them, the birders call them LBJs, Lyndon Baines Johnson, little brown jobs. They're little brown jobs because in the distance, they look like men. But most of our birds are, in fact, brown because that's the climate that we're in, and that's how they can hide from predators. We have dragonflies. We have the red ones, like this one, the flame skimmer, and then we have some cobalt blue ones. They're interesting because they actually do just sort of skim over the water. Look at that pattern. There's a blue one. And does that look like something that Patagonia would put on a clothing line, right? This is how beautiful and dense the population of wild trees and shrubs has become. So we're lucky to have that. So this is, so from 2009 to 2020, these were little tiny baby plants. So they're happy. So here you see the Harbor Freeway, the 110 freeway, the oldest freeway in Los Angeles, and next to it, the Wilmington Drain. Which you would never see when you're up on the freeway, but it's there. So now you are conscious of it. You will tell your friends. You see the the tape again. So right now, some of these trees are deciduous. So the cottonwoods and the sycamores right now, and the grapes would all be losing their leaves. So it would be a different vista than what you're seeing right now if you were there today. And now that we're getting a tiny bit of rain, we might have it greening up again in the spring. Sycamore.
Hi, Heidi. We have a question on our Q&A. It's from Linda. She wants to know if we can have the address for the newsletter.
Newsletter for what?
I'm gonna assume that she's talking about the South Bay Environmental Services Center newsletter. But Heidi, Linda, if you have a question, if you wanted more specific information, type it in the Q&A and we'll get you that information, right. Okay?
Yeah, happy to do it. I'm not sure what newsletter.
Go ahead, Linda, type it in the chat and we'll answer it, okay? Sorry, Heidi, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. So again, here you can see how the tules are laying down. Normally that's life in the big city, in the big flood zone. That's what would happen. The flood water would come rushing in. It would decimate the whole place. The willows would fall down, and willows regenerate. Like you could break one off, stick it in the water, and here we go again. So these plants are adapted to that kind of environment. We don't have that here because this is only 17 acres and we don't have natural flood flow. So we are just mimicking as best we can what would happen in a marshland. That's the sycamore is, yeah, that one's kind of getting towards its fall end. So as the water flows through here, it's amazing that it can. So it was graded so responsibly that the water does flow on its own. So there's no pumping going on. There's actually no watering going on. So all of this beautiful greenery that you see is naturally occurring. The only part that is watered is the demonstration education garden, because that has to be maintained so that we can show you this plant and this plant and this. But the rest of it, it's just whatever happens, happens. If there's no water, there's no water.
So we have a question from Linda, and she's fantastic. She's really interested in what's going on at the marshland. And so one of the things that I've done is I gave them the link to our website, which will help with that. And they're also welcome to call and talk to us. We also have a wonderful idea. So this is where some of our best ideas come from. So thank you, Sue. What she's asking is if we have a live camera out at the marshland. So she brought up something that I'm gonna put it out there. It's kind of a challenge to us as an agency, but we are going to try in January, so it's almost our New Year's resolution, to go ahead and broadcast live from the marshland. So on our first Saturday in January. Now for the December broadcast, it'll be very similar to this, but we're going to feature Laura Alameda, another one of our docents with a whole different area of expertise. But thank you. And we do want to, oh my goodness, we have so many questions. Martin.
Go for it.
I know, right? It's blowing up, which is fantastic. Martin has said it's so informative, and will we offer tours? And that's part of why this broadcast is going on, Martin. We as an agency love to have you out there. There is nothing like hearing, seeing, and even if you snudge one of those grapes, tasting the marshland. And so we want you out there. Normally open the first Saturday of every month from 8 in the morning until noon. And then during this time, we're also offering tour guides, so docents to come into your classroom or your group or even just your homeschool. So go ahead and contact us. I know Maria and Genesis are going to put our contact information in the chat box, but Michelle in the past, and probably me now, will go ahead and schedule those tours for you. When our COVID situation abates, then we're going to have you out there live. But in the interim, we're going to try to broadcast live. So thank you so much for your questions, and I'm going to let Heidi continue her discussion, and I'm going to go ahead and.
Right, that's so great about the cams, because that is a thing now. I mean, I have friends in different parts of the country that use the cams in their backyards to see who's showing up at night. Sorry, freaking phone. So yeah, it's great because you can see what's going on. So live cams are, and that's another thing I mentioned Cornell as a resource for birding. They have live cams all over. So you can see birds doing their thing that you don't see normally, just even with your binoculars. So it's great. So what people do when you're able to come, and there's the bush tit again, my father, the 98-year-old, calls them flying walnuts because they're about the size of a walnut. And they, I think we showed the nest. Yeah, the nest is here. Look at that. Can you imagine that little guy? And this is life size, so you can see how it constructed this thing. I don't know exactly what the evolutionary point was, but clearly it had a point. So we never actually did what I was supposed to do, which was to take you from the beginning to the end. So when you come into the parking lot, to your right is the demonstration garden. To your left, you're going to go to the upper meadow area, which is a great place to just sort of relax, close your eyes and listen to the birds, look down over the marshland. And then the digesters we saw before. And you will never look at them again in the same way, right? And here's the sagebrush again. So it's all, so that's to your left. Then if you continue along the straight path, it's going to take you to the education area on the right, which was the rectangular structure made from the eucalyptus. And then as you continue on, you're going to go across the bridge and see the open water area. Then you're going to see the round pavilion. And then, and one thing about the round pavilion that people absolutely love and love to take pictures of, and I don't have any pictures of that particular thing right now, but because of the eucalyptus shed their layers, and so there's a borer kind of beetle that gets in there and into the eucalyptus, and it creates these paths. So people look at it and they think it's some Native American artwork, but it's just what that weevil beetle did. So it's really fascinating to look at. Go away, Mr. Raccoon. I have to keep my trash cans in my garage because the raccoons are so clever. Because they have hands that really, really work. And if you've ever had your dog sprayed by a skunk, well, you know where I'm at. Mule fat, the idea being, and we don't know if it's true, but the urban legend is that the early settlers would tie up their horse or mule or whatever they were. You know, a mule is a cross between a donkey and a horse. It's infertile. But that's what mules are, and they're workhorses. Mule, workhorse, you know. It's beautiful. So the mule fat it grows in this difficult drought-ridden climate beautifully, and it also has that. See, a lot of these plants, because we live in this environment, these plants are, in order to thrive, they have developed regeneration techniques, which include a lot of that fluff stuff, so that they can carry their seeds all around and not just have them drop on the ground right where they are. So we don't always see these guys, but it's nice to know they're out there. So, and well, Mr. Big Boy here, look at me, I'm really big. And he's on the, yeah, that was the, and that was the plant that was just, oh, here's my favorite tree, the cotton. So that's the one we showed you earlier where the leaf sort of sits sideways. Incredible rattling sound. It also has a really interesting trunk. It's sort of birchy almost looking. There's that leaf again, the sideways leaf. And the sycamore, which, okay, I didn't mention this before, I don't think, but there is a booklet that I can't find that usually 5th grade teachers use. It's about the indigenous use of plant life. And she uses toilet paper. So today, when we're in distress about getting toilet paper, that's sycamore. There you go. And then the swallowtail, actually, he's not in the sycamore, or tiger tail, whatever, swallowtail, whatever, tiger swallowtail. But swallowtail, if you look down at the end, he has that sort of swallowtail. He's not in sycamore, but that's where he needs to put his baby, her babies. So the kestrel again. And you can see, you know, when you look at a kestrel close up, you don't normally see that when they're flying around, obviously, but you can see that beak, that over protrusion, you know, an orthodontist would be like, whoop. That's how they really hold on to things. You can see, oh my goodness, here's Mama Cooper's hawk. And she's gonna hunt. And she's gonna feed her boy, who was screaming for food. And she's gonna catch something because she's a clever female. And he's a demanding boy. And she's actually gonna bring it to him, like on a silver platter. And he's screaming. And there is his lunch, breakfast, dinner, whatever. And he's guarding it. It's dead already, obviously. He's guarding it. And then he's gonna pretend that he didn't really get it. And could I have serving number 2, please, Mom? And he doesn't say please, he just screams. But in flight, the hawks are magnificent. If you've ever seen the hawks playing with crows, one of the great places to watch them play is in the back canyon of Ernie Howlett Park, which is on Hawthorne Boulevard between PV Drive North and Pacific Coast Highway. They fight. I mean, nobody gets hurt, but they do fight. And if you ever want to see crows playing in the thermals, kind of like Jonathan Livingston Seagull, you can go to the end of Crenshaw, just before Del Cerro, and they play, or in Del Cerro as well, they play off the cliffs. Because they know how to use the thermals to glide.
Oh, that's fantastic, Heidi. Thank you so much for joining us and taking us on this exciting virtual tour, and also for all your years of service. You've been doing this since we started in 2009, so a lot of wisdom in Heidi. For those of you who have additional questions, you're welcome to continue to ask them, or you can use that raise hand feature, and Genesis and Maria and I will watch for that and allow you to talk if you'd like to talk to Heidi directly. In the interim, I would just like to thank everyone for spending your Saturday morning with the sanitation districts. When you get out to the marshland, you have this opportunity to experience with all of your senses. So you can hear those beautiful Cooper's hawks, you can see the ducklings, and you can also observe all of these incredible plants. Until we can do that, we'd like to have a chance to come into your homes, your classrooms. So those of you who are educators or students out there, go ahead and send that information in, and we will schedule on an on-demand basis these live tours and discussions about the marshland. And then when we're able to again, we're going to go ahead and invite you in as part of the community to this incredible resource. So thank you all for joining us. It has been our pleasure. We have our contact information up there, and we'll do a quick scan for additional questions or raised hands from the attendees. And seeing none, I will simply thank you for joining us, and we will sign off. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your participation, and a special thanks to Heidi. So I'll kind of applaud and then I'll be quiet. Our next tour will be on December the 5th, and it will feature Laura Alameda, and she is again a docent extraordinaire. So we're on these broadcasts, we're featuring docents with different areas of expertise.
Yes, Laura is wonderful. I love her.
Oh, we have one more question, and it's Martin, and everyone is so kind. They're just saying thanks to Heidi and how brilliant she is. So we really appreciate your contributions to the marshland and to the community. And with that, thank you, everyone, and we're signing off.